all, thank you for this invitation to be here. I am the Rabbi of Congregation Lev Ha'ir, heart of the city, and we are very grateful to you for your gracious sharing of this beautiful space. We love this home. We love this place. And we are also very happy to be partners in power together, the Ethical Society and Congregation Lev Ha'ir. And I know many of you have taken part in various power activities, many of you. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Power's climate justice work and how I personally came into this and then helped build the team that is doing the work. And after I say some words, I'm going to invite Anthony Clark, who's my comrade in arms in our nonviolent work of doing climate justice throughout Philadelphia. He is one of our newest people coming in just at the end of 2017, second half of that year, and he will talk about his journey into this work. And then you'll have the beginning and you'll have the most up to date. So about maybe 6-ish years ago, I was doing all-in power work on racial and economic justice issues and showing up again and again with people in power for standing with low-wage workers. When Michael Brown was murdered and the verdict came down, we were in the streets organizing thousands of people looking at police violence. And again, we were showing up with each other to do economic dignity work and criminal justice work. So we were bonding there. And many of the people I was bonding with were African-American church ladies. They were people who for decades had run the bingo games at their churches, organized the child care. They were organizers. And we got to be really good friends, just showing up again and again and again, doing the racial and economic justice work. In the meantime, in that same period, I was in a faith-based Jewish group that met every other Saturday afternoon. And we were a study action group. We called ourselves Be the Change, learning about climate issues. And in our group, we started out looking at how we could stop using plastic bags, we could change our light bulbs, and every couple of weeks we would read and educate ourselves about climate crisis. And as we went deeper into the story of what's happening to our planet and our human communities, we realized it isn't just about plastic bags and changing light bulbs. It has to be a much more systemic level change if we're going to move rapidly enough to save life on the planet, really. And I realized I couldn't look at this devastating reality alone. I needed to build an incredible sort of support, solidarity circle, or I wouldn't be able to face the truth about what this human-made climate crisis is. And so I turned to my African-American friends in the social justice world and said, hey, what about if we start doing this together? What if we look at how climate crisis is impacting the communities that we're working with, which are low-income communities of color throughout southeastern Pennsylvania? And they said to me, well, we really aren't sure this is our issue. You know, we're working hard to put food on the table and to get our kids safely home from school and our grandkids, jobs. And the questions I have, so some of them literally said to me, my nephew's getting out of prison and he needs a job. And it was really clear to me that what was primary front and center on the minds of my friends wasn't yet connected to climate crisis. But they said, we're friends, and if you're asking us, yes, we'll step in and we'll take a look at this. And it was because of this relational base that those folks stepped in, and we spent a year in my living room, meeting very regularly, just learning. And as we began to learn together about how climate crisis impacts those most vulnerable communities, my friends started saying, oh my goodness, we thought this wasn't our issue, but this is the same old thing. This is who's getting targeted here is the same people who are targeted by school disinvestment, unemployment, mass incarceration, insecurities in energy, in food, in healthcare. And climate crisis targets those same communities with an exacerbation of those insecurities. And we began looking at it. And we took maps of these issues in Philadelphia. Where are the highest asthma rates? Where are the toxic dumps? Where are the high unemployment rates? Where are the high massive? And it turned out it's all the same neighborhoods. And so our group went from saying this isn't our issue to saying we are outraged that people think we shouldn't care about this. And we started looking at that juncture of what happens in a city of racism, extreme inequality, and climate distress. We started looking right at that juncture. And if that sounds kind of overwhelming and cause for despair, we also started looking at this huge gateway of opportunity for moving forward into a renewable energy future, and how many jobs would be created, and what it would really look like economically to bring everybody into a renewable energy economy, looking at a clean, inclusive future. So it isn't all despair, gloom, and doom. It turned out, when we started looking at the issues that most mattered to our constituency in power, it was really about where are the green jobs, and where are the opportunities for local investment and local ownership. So we're not just looking at the training. We are looking at training, pathways for inclusive training, and we are looking at inclusive hiring into a renewable energy economy, but we're also really looking at who owns the cow. Who is going to own the solar equipment and the solar arrays and whatever other kinds of renewable energy is developed? But how can we move forward with energy democracy in a very decentralized grid that empowers and includes everybody? And so from that, we created a number of resources. One of them is called Change the Climate, Building Power at the Intersection of Race, Economics, and Climate. Because we realized we're going to have no voice in any of this unless we actually build some power, which is going to be done relationally, each one regionally, just sharing education out in communities and helping people connect the dots in the ways that our little multiracial, multi-faith committee started to do. And so we created this resource. And I'm actually not going to show this entire thing, but I'm going to see if I can just move through these slides. You can see the pictures, and it'll be up on the Power website in the not-distant future. It basically talks about moving forward on environment and equity at the same time. It's a faith-based journey into the heart of racial, economic, and climate justice. Our faith-based network includes people of all different faiths and no faith and ethical human beings of all kinds, including this humanistic community. So we started looking at how fossil fuel emissions overheat the planet, and that's what causes disruption in climate. It causes more natural disasters, such as storms and flooding, and less stability in all of the systems that support human communities. And we started looking at how the fossil fuel economy is an extractive economy, but extraction is nothing new. Extraction started with extracting from our land in the form of genocide of the Native American people. It started with black bodies being slaves and building the wealth of the country. And that the whole idea of an extractive economy that's based on more, can't continue because the earth cannot sustain that process. And we started looking at how our faith stories could support us in moving forward on this. So this picture of this, so we look at what is sort of holding up a fossil fuel economy. An extreme wealth gap holds it up because fossil fuel corporations lobby and spend a lot of money and buy votes, basically, to support more fossil fuel development. Corporate greed, racism. That some communities are expendable. Some communities can be sacrifice zones where they get the toxic dumps and they get the high particle emissions where you get, up to 90% of a neighborhood having asthma because of where it's located. That's environmental racism. And then, of course, money in politics. So all of those things intersect and hold up this pyramid of the fossil fuel economy. And these are the maps that we layered, which I'm just going to look at the poor health outcomes, the environmental racism. And we started asking who gets hurt when race, economics, and climate crisis collide. Who gets hurt? And we looked at all these kinds of insecurities and how they are all exacerbated. And at some point, if you want to study this more carefully, I have one hard copy with me today, but this will be up on the new Power website, which is rolling out in a few weeks. This is where we started looking at the story of Exodus as a liberation story that tells us how we need to work together to address the pharaoh of the fossil fuel industry. And this is what I really wanted to get to. We came up with a moral framework for moving forward on these issues. It's Power's moral framework for building the beloved community, racial and economic justice on a livable planet. And it has 5 planks. And basically it says, we hold the intersection of race and economics as the key lens of the climate conversation. And we make front and center the voices of people most impacted by poverty, racism, and climate crisis. And at the same time, we're building a multiracial, multi-faith, crossing bounds of urban, suburban, rural geography lines. So it's an inclusive people's movement. We need every single person with every idea, every bit of energy, every commitment to work together. This is so important that we believe the rights and dignity of workers are essential to any transition from a fossil fuel economy to a renewable one. We're not just going to create another expendable group, the workers who were in the fossil fuel industry. We need to work together for a just transition where people get retraining and there's more investment for new kinds of economic development. But we have to move away from a fossil fuel economy. And so we stand for healthy lives for all. Pathways into green jobs, local and inclusive investment in green infrastructure, and solutions that build economic opportunity, lift people out of poverty, and challenge racism as we work for a livable planet. And this is why I mentioned this already. We build bridges between urban, suburban, and rural communities. Power is now Power here. It's also Power Metro in the suburbs, and it's also Power Central moving out into the counties towards Harrisburg, and we ally with sister organizations even beyond that, because we realize we need statewide people power if we're actually going to impact regulatory and legislative issues in this arena. So those are the 5 planks of Power's moral framework. And one of the things we've been doing is bringing together all of the other environmental groups in the region to work through this moral framework so that we're always moving towards equity and environmental justice at the same time. It can't just be there's an environmental movement and it's all white and it's about the planet, but it's not about the people. It's got to be a multiracial movement that talks about healthy human communities that work for everyone as we move forward. And so that's Power's sort of sweet spot, vision, and mission. And we've been doing incredibly exciting strategic alignment of our own allies, the other environmental and equity groups in the area. In October, we brought together 19 different environmental groups, big greens, all the way down to local scrappy powerhouse organizations like 350. So we brought everybody together who's doing environmental work in the region, if they were willing to work through this moral framework that just totally integrates equity and environment. People were really excited and came, and it was an amazing gathering. And afterwards, people said, we're just so grateful to Power for doing this, because Power had the credibility to call these groups in and to start this cooperation and collaboration. But prior to that, there was no way that anyone could have a conversation or coordinate or strengthen each other's work, because we literally had no venue for it. We didn't know each other. Other there were a few back-channel relationships, but there was no place where all these groups could meet. And this week, we're bringing together the 6 very local campaigns that are happening right here. Power Local Green Jobs is Power's campaign with our faith-based partner, Equate, the Earthquaker Action Team. And we'll say more about that in a minute. And we're bringing together 5 other local campaigns: Fossil Free SEPTA, Right to Breathe, a group called Soil Generation has one. Anyway, there's 6 local campaigns. They're right here. And we're going to strengthen our alliance also because we decided that the 19 environmental groups, some of them are statewide, some of them they're all doing different things, but there's 6 very local campaigns where we actually can work together to change this up. So let me stop there and invite Anthony Clark to come forward and just tell his story about the journey to Power, and then I want to talk about our Power Local Green Jobs campaign.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. Hope everyone is enjoying this very special day so far. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Anthony Clark. I'm a member of Unitarian Universalist Church of the Restoration and also Power Climate Justice Team. I first learned about Power during my church voters registration drive in the autumn of 2016. Where I heard things like power is at the forefront, power this and that, no one does it better, etc. After the election, I wanted to learn more of this Power Interfaith organization I heard many great things about on the campaign trail. But at that same time, I was suffering with a condition called PTED. Most of you remember it as post-traumatic election depression. After seeking professional therapy, the cause of my depression was associated with the number 45. In doing my research, I learned that Power was having a climate justice group interest meeting at their main office, where I met some wonderful people like Rabbi Julie, Paula, Anthony, and many more. Before Power, the only thing I knew about climate change were the polar bears suffering, melting ice caps, and scientific studies. I failed to make the connection in terms of the direct impact on our own lives, families, and communities, which Power helped me to see. Climate change is a matter that must be urgently addressed by all of us. The increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events such as Hurricanes Wilma, Katrina, and most recent Harvey, Irma, Maria, and wildfires confirms that climate change is indeed occurring and that its impacts will continue to affect their lives and livelihoods, disproportionately affecting the vulnerable. 2018 is a crucial year in shaping the human response to climate change, especially considering the denials we have running our government. I like the fact that Power plays an important role in advocating for racial and economic justice. Discrimination, segregation, and hatred are wrong. Separate is not equal. The more unequal a community, the greater the incidence of heart disease, asthma, mental illness, cancer, and other morbid illnesses. Our planet is experiencing significant and accelerated climate change that began over a century ago. Climate change impacts both significant social, economic, and environmental risks to the United States and the global community. If we want to avoid dangerous climate change and its consequences to creatures all over the world, it is necessary that we take action right now. I'm thankful to Power, Equate, and faith communities for taking on the challenges that face Pennsylvania's clean energy sector, which is good for our health, our environment, and the economy. That's why I continue to be part of the Power Interfaith movement. Thank you.
Climate justice team of Power has 4 task forces, and one of them is a research and policy task force. It's recruiting people who are interested in doing research and policy. That task force has just weighed in on the Office of Sustainability's proposed plan for Renewable Philadelphia, and on some state legislation. So the Policy and Research Group has a public presence at hearings and when the public is invited to weigh in. And we're always putting that equity piece front and center. Then we also are part of a local campaign, Power Local Green Jobs, that Power and our faith allies, Quaker Action Team, co-run. And I'll say something about that. PECO, our biggest electric utility, believe it or not, in this era of climate crisis and extreme inequality, is not taking any leadership to create a future for this city. PECO likes to say we're smart, we're a leader, but PECO in this context has no plan for climate crisis, is at this moment buying 0.27 of 1% of solar energy as part of their energy pie. Way less than 1% solar energy. And it is not local solar energy, they import it. So we're saying we want you to commit to buying 20% solar energy by 2025 and to have a pathway of equity and inclusion. So who's going to get those jobs? Who's getting the training? Who are you buying that energy from? And to make sure that we're both building communities that work for all, even as we build a planet that can sustain us. So PECO has paid a lot of attention to us. This campaign started about 2.5 years ago. We chose to work with Equate because Equate was coming off of a 5-year victory with PNC Bank in stopping investment in mountaintop removal for coal mining. And when Equate first started, PNC Bank, a big national bank, was like, oh, they're like a little fly swatting around it. We don't have to pay attention to them. And Equate built and built and built this campaign to the point where in 40 cities around the country, people were popping up, saying, PNC, we need you to stop investing in mountaintop removal for coal mining. And you can't do mountaintop removal for coal mining unless these banks keep an infusion of capital into it. And the Quakers would show up in the board meetings and just have silent prayer for worship in their board meetings. And it just escalated and escalated, and finally PNC said, okay, enough, and agreed to stop with the investment in mountaintop removal for coal mining. So we chose Equate because it's a very strategic organization that knows how to build power and win. So we're now what we think is probably about halfway into this campaign with PECO, and PECO is paying a lot of attention to us, but so far is only willing to make very small changes, not to be bold energy leaders for our future. So our last big action, which had about 250 people at the PECO building just about a month ago, we took pennies to PECO, and we said, we don't need small change. We need big change. And we had our big change choir singing there, and we had big artistic made in hula hoops pennies, but big pennies that had our messages, 20% solar energy by 2025. And PECO said, well, we want to sit down again and talk with you. And we said, well, we're really happy to talk with you, but we need to have some real decision makers at the table. We don't just want to talk for the sake of talk. And their PR person told us, well, I'll probably be the highest decision maker at the table, but we really want to talk. We want to have a dialogue. Their communications director, who's a really nice guy. And we've decided, okay, we'll write back and say, well, let's not have that meeting until you can bring real decision makers to the table. So they came back and said, okay, who do you want at the table? And we picked some people. And we're meeting this week. We've spent about 15 hours in strategy meetings preparing for that meeting, like what message do we want to give and what is the next step. But we think we probably really need to still keep building the movement of people who are caring about this before we will actually see any big changes. But we are sitting down with PICO this week. They're coming to the power office. They're bringing their executive director who's in charge of procuring energy, their executive director who's in charge of the lobbying piece with the Public Utility Commission, and a few other people. But we want even the higher level. We want the boss and the boss's boss who can actually really change this up. So we're working our way up. In the meantime, because I know I need to stop in a minute here, we have postcards here. We're actually about to get these redone. They're going to be much more beautiful postcards within a few weeks, but right now, if you want to send a message to PICO about be an energy leader, 20% by 2025, fossil-free world, whatever, this you can fill out your message here and give it to me, and we will fill out PICO's address, and they will get the card. These are here. And I also have a sign-off sheet here for anybody who is interested in joining one of these task forces that's doing the work. You can put your name, your email address, if you want to get the weekly newsletter from Power with everything that's going on, or the climate justice news, you can check that out. And we also invite people to become monthly sustainers. That's how we fuel our own work, by having internal streams of commitment. And we just believe that if it's precious to you, if it's what matters, we have to invest in that. So we invite people to become monthly sustainers at any amount, $5, $50. If you check there, I will follow up with you personally and help you figure out how to do that. Also, if anybody just has any questions at all, I'm Julie Greenberg. You can find me on the Power website, or talk to me today and then talk back after this. So thank you all very much. Is my time up, or do we have time for questions? Or?
No, we'll do that.
That'll be later. Okay, should I pass this around now, or just leave it over here?
We'll put it on the table.
Okay,
In the back.
great, wonderful. Thank you all.